You would be hard pressed to find a high performance road cyclist that doesn't have an intimate knowledge of power meters and watts. But for one reason or another, they're not so prevalent with us, mountain bikers. But why? So what is a power meter? What does it do? And what can we learn from its readings? So I thought I'd ask the man himself, Mr. Chris Opie, who not only was a professional road cyclist for most of his life, but is also damn handy on a mountain bike. So hopefully he was able to shed some light on the issue. So Chris, what is a power meter?
So a power meter is a device on your bike, either in your cranks or your spider. It could be in your bottom bracket.
Right, okay.
It could be in your pedals, or it could be in your rear hub, although you see those less these days. And it's a device that measures your power output in watts.
Okay, cool. So how does it measure power?
Okay, so generally speaking, the more expensive a power meter, the more strain gauges it has inside of it and the more accurate they are. And a strain gauge is a very lightweight, thin piece of foil, and it's put onto a piece of metal, it's glued on, and there'll be an electrical current flowing through it, and that will measure the deflection of the material that it's stuck to, which then calculates your torque output, which then, multiplied by revolutions per minute, gives you your power output in watts.
And what is a watt?
So a watt is an expression of a measurement of workload. So I think a watt roughly translates to the workload of a joule per second.
Wow. So what affects this then? If I'm in a big gear, pedaling away, putting a lot of torque through the cranks, do things like RPM and the gear I choose affect the wattage reading?
Yeah, definitely. So you could be riding along in a really big gear. Imagine you're on the flat and you're doing like 20 k's an hour or 12 miles an hour along a gravel path.
Yep.
And you're in the top gear, so in the 11 or the 10 at the back, and you're pedaling at around, 55, 60 revs per minute?
Right, okay.
You're going to be producing a lot of torque to continue the momentum, so it'd be like lifting a really heavy weight in the gym.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in middle of the block, you could be spinning along at like 110, 120, you're producing a lot less torque, but your wattage reading is going to be very similar.
And so are they linked? Is RPM an important measurement, or your revolutions at the cranks? Is that an important measurement for getting our wattage?
Yeah, absolutely. So the higher your RPM, the more of your cardiovascular system you're going to be using to produce the power, but you won't need as much torque to do that. So people will argue that it's actually less fatiguing on your legs. Although realistically, that sort of fatigue is it's self-inbuilt. Like everyone has their preferred cadence. So some people prefer to pedal at 70 RPM, for example, and some people prefer to pedal a little bit faster.
So if you were putting a power meter on a mountain bike, what would be your preferred setup? Do you think you'd go in the same like you do on the road, in the crankset?
Yeah, definitely in the crankset, not in the pedals, not in the hub. I think I'd probably stick with the spider or in the crank arms. The crank arms are quite good because they're not going to take any impacts onto the chainring, are they? Mm-hmm. So that the only impacts they're getting are just standard crank arm impacts that you're going to have anyway. So maybe that's actually probably the safest for a mountain bike.
For a mountain bike. Now, there's a key word I think when we talk about power meters, and that is consistency.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that experienced at training with power meters. I've done a bit, and I've actually got one on my bike currently. But I suppose that the number, to a degree, isn't that important, as long as you're always training to the same number.
Yeah.
If you're to do any structured training, and the number's constantly changing, it might be flattering you some days, it might be deceiving you on others.
Yeah, that would be the worst.
But that would be the worst. Actually, if your wattage looks a bit lower than you think it should be, it might not be the end of the world, because if you can still get a structured training session in to maximise the effects of your high-load training, well, surely is consistency king?
I think so. Accuracy is really important, but it's less important than it was years ago. So years ago, when power meters were new, you'd have all sorts of issues. They would drift with temperature. So if it got warmer whilst you're out on your ride, you'd find that your power was just ramping up, and you could hold numbers that normally you wouldn't dream of, which is really is amazing. Yeah. I had one season where I went through 7 different power meters, all the same brand. And it was purely because of that, purely because of the drift. And you get to the end of like a really hard effort and you still be doing like almost peak numbers. And you're like, not sure this is right, but I feel it's a real good confidence boost.
Yes. Now, I'm pretty old school, I suppose, in that I've trained with a heart rate monitor for a long time. Is heart rate monitor better or worse than power, or is it just different?
It's different, but at the same time, I wouldn't exclude one or the other. I think a lot of riders get so focused on power as everything. For years, I didn't even ride with a heart rate strap, whereas now I would, just to get that extra reference point that I mentioned before. It's better to have a more complete picture. The more information you can get if you're training to a serious standard, the better, obviously. But I don't know that one is necessarily going to be better than the other. It's partly what you get used to, what you can afford, because power meters are not the cheapest thing out there, are they?
No, it's very true.
Luckily these days though, you can get good software that estimates your power output as well. So there are certain online ride logging sites that will give you an estimate for your entire ride, and actually it's not that far off anymore.
So I've been doing a bit of the old Zwift recently, and my bike doesn't have a power meter on it,
Right.
but I'm getting a power reading. How does that work?
So Zwift have got loads of algorithms, haven't they, with stored turbo trainer numbers. So they know that if your rear wheel's spinning at a certain speed, roughly what that equates to on whichever given circuit, based on your weight.
So I guess it opens up using power as a training tool, even if you don't have any of the power meter componentry upon your bike.
Yeah, it makes it much more affordable, and you can just jump on with the speed sensor and go.
Which is pretty good. Yeah. So we're seeing it more and more with high-end EWS racers and some downhill racers. And they have a power meter on their downhill bike or their enduro bike. Now this bike is mainly there for descending.
Yeah.
What's power got to do with it?
Well, it's going to help analyse the event, isn't it? So it will help them then go back with the coaches, work towards a training program to create the best athlete possible. So at the start gate, how many watts are they producing? Are they still able to produce anywhere near that power further down? If they're not, then that's highlighting the fact that they fatigue quite quickly. Is their heart rate sky high and they're not able to get the power out on the transitional sections? So EWS, that's more important. And also actually for EWS, it's going to help them save energy between the stages as well, because they'll know at no point should they be pedaling too hard.
That's very true.
That's a really important thing about power meters, is they're really great for holding you back when you don't need to be wasting loads of energy.
That's true. I suppose with power meters, there's a big number of watts per kilo. So you can predict how fast you're going to climb a hill.
Yeah.
So that could help give a better estimation, and then so you're not standing at the top twiddling your thumbs for 20 minutes.
No, exactly.
If you're taking it easy.
If you're really analysing an event, you know that you've got X amount of time to get to the top. Don't do it in half that time and then stand around like you just said. Just cruise up the entire time. It's going to save a lot more energy. You'll recover better, meaning you'll be faster on the next run, which is more important.
So, final question then. Are power meters for mountain bikers?
Absolutely. I think they're for everyone. Anyone that wants to improve their cycling in some way will benefit from using a power meter.
Well, there we go then. Simple as that. So that is it. I think we're a bit better educated now about what the hell a power meter is.
If we're not, it will be next time.
Yeah, totally. Now I'm going to throw to a cross-country versus mud tyres comparison I did a little while back. So click down here for that one.
Ooh, and if you want more technical advice right now, check out Doddy's Geometry 101 just down there.
Oh, perfect. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.